Good morning, everybody. Tuesday morning here. This is our Health, Wealth, and Business session number 7. And I'm Katie Collins. For those of you who don't know me, I am a coach for coaches and wellness practitioners who have a hard time with their visibility and sales skills. So I help them overcome those two problems, which are huge problems in terms of getting business, so that you can actually make the kind of money that you pictured when you first got started in this business. So today I am, excuse me, I'm a little stuffy. So today I am talking to you about how to write a compelling background story. So sometimes I call it your shero's journey, since I work with women, or other people call it the hero's journey story. And the purpose of this story is to build connection with your ideal people so that they can see that you've either gone through this struggle yourself that you're helping them overcome, or someone you love dearly, you witnessed them going through that and how that impacted you. So that's what we're going to chat about today. So just give me just a moment here. I'm going to take a sip and get my stuff ready and see if anyone hops on live. Feel free to join me in your coffee drinking. Excuse me. All right. Okay, awesome. All right, so the purpose of writing or of having this background story is because in step 1 of the enrollment conversation, you've got to build some rapport and connection. And so a lot of people don't quite know how to do that, and this is how. And so in that stage of the conversation, we're going to be the leader on the call, let them know, how this call is going to go and what we're going to take them through that during that conversation and how long they should expect the call to be. We're going to ask them if there's something that they'd like to get out of the call. And then we're going to start by saying, since we're going to be spending some time together, would it be okay if I take about a minute or two to go over, and to let you know a little bit about my own journey. Sometimes I get the question, if they met me at a speaking gig and I already shared my journey from stage, should I share it again during the call? And my answer is give them a choice. So something that I say is, depending on when the speaking gig was. So if I happen to get on the call with them the very next day, then they probably remember my story. But regardless, a week later, they don't. And we don't want to test them or quiz them in any way and make them feel like they have to, remember everything we said. So what they're going to remember most is how your story made them feel. And so what I like to ask is, hey, I know that you were at my speaking gig the other day, or whatever workshop title would be, and I told my story during that time. So at this time in this call, I would normally be telling you my story, but since you've already heard it, I'm wondering if it would serve you to hear it again, a slightly different version, or if you'd just like to share something that sparked, what sparked in you when you heard my story. So that kind of gives them the option to recall your story or not. And I find more than half the time people just want to hear the story again. So, all right, so that's that question. Okay, so so the reason why we are doing this, the reason why we're telling this story, is because we want the listener to know that you're the perfect person to help her or him through this problem. And the only way we can do that is by telling the story of you going through that journey yourself. So, I'm sure you're well aware, buyers make decisions based on how they feel. And so starting the conversation in this way, giving them a chance to feel you and your journey and your story really builds authentic connection. Okay, so here's just another way that we're connecting, which makes it feel less salesy and more authentic and aligned with who you are. All right, so a couple things before we dive in. You want to do your best to tell this story with like the most visceral details possible. One of my one that I remember well is helping someone with her story, and she her visceral detail was falling to the floor in the shower and just not being able to get up, sobbing over what was lost with her and her relationship with her husband. And right, like that's a visceral detail. We can all picture that. Some of us have done that before, right? That absolute devastation, falling to the floor, sobbing. That's a visceral detail. Another example, even if you're positioning yourself, say you're a relationship coach and you're positioning yourself like, I'm married to the best guy ever. Give us an example of why that is. Instead of just telling us he's the best guy, show us, right? So you might say, in fact, just the other day, he brought me, he came home with flowers for no reason, right? Or just the other day, he surprised me and did X, Y, Z. And it may be, he surprised me and did all the, cleaning of the house, right? Like, it doesn't have to be extravagant. It has to be thoughtful and something that meant something to you. Because if it really meant something to you, that emotion is going to come out in your story. All right, so brings some visceral details as much as possible, especially in the low point, which we're going to get into in a minute. All right, so I actually had a couple of slides I wanted to share with you. So let me just cue that up here. Okay. All right, so the tip being, even though this is your story, it's really about your ideal client. And what we want to be saying is, I get you. I was once where you are now. And then I had this insight that changed everything. And now my life is so much better. Okay, so obviously these aren't the words we're going to be using, but that's the message behind the purpose of your story, okay? And then the last one is, and that's why I'm so passionate about the work I'm doing now, because it changed my life, and I believe it can change yours too. So we're taking them on a journey, and it's like the beginning of the journey of where, it was tough for you, and then what turned it around. Okay, now the next thing I just wanted to share is we want to start with a high point, move into a low point, go into a turning point, and then land on a high point again. So I'm just going to go through each one of these. All right, so for the first high point, you want to start off by positioning yourself so that the listener doesn't feel sorry for you when you go into the low point. So ideally, you're positioning yourself in the actual niche and urgent problem and solution that you're providing, right? So I would position myself as having, the business that my ideal client would love to have. If you're a relationship coach, you're going to position your family and your relationship in high regard so that we're longing for that, right? So I used to learn it as the high point would be, I have what you want. That's kind of the message when you're writing that point. All right, and then a good segue moving into a low point is just letting them know, it wasn't always this way. Or you can say, when I look back on the journey that I've had, I can't believe where I started because it was low, right? So just some sort of transitional statement that lets them know you're now into that low point. And the reason for the low point is that you want to be building connection. And you do that by sharing your own journey of what you've gone through. And so you want to talk about a low point that the listener can relate to because it's around the same problem that you now help solve, right? And it's likely where she is in her journey right now. So a lot of people get stuck here and they want to tell a low point in their life. And so I just recommend that you pick a low point that's related to what you're helping your ideal clients through. A question I always get here is, how vulnerable is too vulnerable? So that's totally up to you. You don't want to deposition yourself, but you can definitely make up for that when you get into the high point at the end of the story. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But you don't need to get into nitty-gritty details. But again, if you give some visceral examples, they'll just understand that you understand them. And that's the point. The point isn't to see who has the lowest point of a story. The point of the low point of your story, the purpose of it, is to build that connection and let them know, I understand you because I was there too. Okay, so moving into the turning point, you're basically showing her this guiding light, okay? Because she's going to be her own hero in the story, but you're going to be the guiding light for it. And so this is the point that helped turn things around for you. Like where and when did that pivot happen? Ideally, you want to talk about the action that you're about to ask them to take. For example, I hired a coach and that changed everything, right? Or if you're a health coach, maybe it's, I got clear on what things in my diet were making me feel so horrible. And the minute I changed my diet, things started to change, right? So it doesn't always have to be a hired support, but that you did this thing that you're about to ask them to do. That's the purpose behind the turning point or the guiding light of the story. And then the returning to the other high point of your story, the reason for that is you want to leave them with that inspiration and insight, right? So we started with some positioning, we built some connection, you showed them the guiding light of what helped you, and now you want to leave them with that inspiration and insight. So it's your high point in this place is your now, right? It's how your ideal client can see that you're not only an inspiration, but you're the perfect person to support her with this challenge. All right, so let's see, get that out of here, come back to you. Okay, so what I want to recommend you do for this part is to really write out using that, high point, low point, turning point, high point structure. I encourage you to write out 1 or 2 sentences per point. And that's how you develop your 1 to 2 minute version of this story. And then when you're doing a speaking gig and you're going to tell the story for 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how long your speaking gig is, it's going to be the same story, but you're going to fill in the time with examples and details and memories that you have that prove the point that you're talking about. So I would love to hear your stories. Drop me a note in the comment and feel free to send me a message and let me know. Or better yet, hop into the Wealthy Holistic Solopreneur Sister group and post it there. And I'd love to give you feedback, and we can tag some other members, that could also give you feedback. So most important thing is to make this story as meaningful as possible so that it really connects with your ideal people. And again, it's not necessarily that you have to have some sort of crash and burn journey as much as you just need to tell the story of, I understand you, and that's why I'm the perfect person to help you through this, because I got through it myself. All right, so hop on over into the Facebook group, let me know what story you're working on, and we will see you here tomorrow at 8:30 Mountain Time. All right, have a good day. Bye.